I'm Dr. Samuel Chaim Brody. I teach in the Religious Studies department. So in spring 2026, I'm teaching Religion 325, Introduction to Judaism. For many years, this class has been online only, and I wanted to bring back the in-person version. So I'm excited about that because I structure the online and in-person versions a little differently. And I'm just kind of interested in getting back to that in-person version and seeing what I can do with it now that it's been a little while. So
Mhm.
that class will focus on the whole history of Judaism from ancient Israel to the present, and it will do it all in just one semester. So anybody who, no prerequisites required, anybody who has any curiosity is invited to get on board with that. My other class in the spring is going to be Prophets and Profits. That is a class that is about religion and economics. It is cross-listed in economics, um, although it is not really a quantitative class. It's not about math. It's about the way that different religions have approached the question of money and trade and finance and wealth and poverty and all the different kinds of things that we associate with the world of economics. So it's really a religious ethics class, but it would be, I think, a good fit for both religion students and econ students who are interested in coming at this question from another angle. Well, in Intro to Judaism, I always love introducing students to the world of rabbinics. And that's because I sense that many students who, especially American students who may come from a Christian background, may be somewhat familiar with the Hebrew Bible, or as they usually think of it, the Old Testament, but they generally know little to nothing about rabbinics, which is actually the foundation of the Jewish tradition as we understand it today. So I always get a big kick out of introducing students to the Mishnah, the Talmud, and then medieval Jewish thought. Um, so that's one of my favorite parts of that class. In the other class, I enjoy introducing students to the way that people in the same tradition can have opposite ideas about the same topic. Drawing on the same sources, they can come to opposite conclusions. So you can, this is something we get to mainly towards the end of the class, but the conflict between different groups of Christians, for example, over whether Christianity supports capitalism or whether it's a socialist tradition. And the different kinds of methodological questions that go into asking that, because obviously Christianity is much older than capitalism or socialism. So how do people get this idea that it supports one of these systems or the other? So those questions I think are very interesting, and that's part of what I like to do in that class. Well, I think a basic grounding in Judaism is important for people who want to contribute to conversations um, about Western European and American politics. The reason I say that is that Jews are a figure of Christian thought. So in Christian majority countries, uh, there is often a tendency to crystallize major disagreements that Christians are having around the idea of Jews. And that is unfortunately entirely nothing to do with who Jews are and what they do themselves and how they think about themselves, which is what we're going to talk about in Intro to Judaism.
Mhm.
But I think it is important to have that latter grounding so that you can kind of understand that first thing is going on when you see it. Um, and so I would say that's a sort of general goal, not necessarily career related, but it is an important aspect of critical thinking if you live in a Western country that has a Christian inheritance.
Mhm.
Um, Profits and profits, it moves a little bit more towards the practical side. Obviously, the first thing is practical if you wanted to work in the Jewish professional world or something, but there are some students at KU who go on to do things like that, and but I don't take for granted that that's an interest that most or even many of my students will have. Um, Profits and Profits, I think, is interesting in the way that people who are going into the world of medicine find taking a medical ethics class to be interesting.
Mhm.
Even if your primary overriding focus is science or some really specialized corner of the medical world, taking something in bioethics can really expand your horizons and change your approach to that topic, which is otherwise extremely narrow,
Mhm.
right? And so I think the same thing is true of profits and profits, which always attracts students who may be pre-business or thinking about going into the business school or the business world. And it approaches the question from a side that's not just what you would usually find in a business ethics class in the business school, which is often very case-based, focuses on the kinds of things that would come up when you work for a corporation or something like that. This is about a much longer term history, putting the question of economic order on the table, not just, what should you do if your investment does blah, 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 but how should we arrange our entire society in terms of economics? And so I think, again, it's really about expanding people's horizons in a way that could potentially intersect with a lot of different things that they might want to do. Um, I think that in both of these cases, it's a little bit like learning a new language, which some people think they're really not good at, and other people feel like they have a natural talent for. But I don't mean it literally. I don't mean it literally, even though Intro to Judaism involves learning a lot of terms in Hebrew and Aramaic, because that's just what happens. Um, what I mean is it's a way of thinking that is applicable to a lot of things outside of itself. Just the way that when you learn a language, nobody tells you you have to talk about going to a restaurant and ordering food, and that's the only thing you can say. Even if those are some of the terms you learn at first, when you learn a language, you can eventually talk about whatever you want. And so I like to think of these classes as giving students tools for thinking that they can later put together in new ways. The same way that when you learn a language, you can make new sentences. You don't have to only say sentences that have been said before.
Mhm.
And you don't have to let AI make your sentences for you. I would add that as well.